All right, hello Capricorns. Welcome to your reading for June 2026. Let's go ahead and pull some cards, do a good shuffle here, and see what comes up for you. Maybe do one more. All right, cool. So Capricorn, what do we got? We have the Six of Wands, Four of Cups, the Four of Pentacles, the Nine of Swords, and the Knight of Wands. All right. All right, I'm not gonna lie, we're off to a little bit of a rough start here. So it sounds like you're kind of going through something right now where my camera's kind of in a weird position. There's some kind of loss involved with like the loss of a position of status, or maybe a fallen from grace in the eyes of certain individuals who used to maybe look up to you. Something kind of went wrong here. Either maybe you lost a position at work, or you didn't get the promotion you were going through. Something just happened here where you just didn't get the sort of elevated status that maybe you were hoping for. And there's this sense of like it's upsetting. There's like this difficulty in letting go of it. If you were occupying some kind of elevated position in your life and then lost it, there's this sense of like you really don't want to let it go. There's a clinging, wanting to hang on to whatever you've got. But the loss, or potential loss even, of whatever this thing may be is causing a lot of anxiety, maybe a lot of negative self perceptions, maybe some nightmares. Like this thing is, whatever this specific situation is, it seems to be leaving you feeling a little bit like tortured by it. And now there's a sense of restlessness, like maybe you feeling like I need to get this back. I must, work harder, keep going. Like you don't want to stop. There's just a lot of restlessness and discomfort and just general dissatisfaction with the loss of something. You know, Again, these tarot cards don't give you exact specific details, but that's kind of the general context of what we're looking at here. So I'm going to pull a few more cards. I'll pause the video while I shuffle. Okay, so one more. All right, so let's pull some more cards and see what we got here. So we have the Nine of Wands, sort of defensive position, kind of expecting things that have happened in the past to happen again. Oops. Got the Nine of Pentacles, the Ten of Wands, Ace of Swords, Five of Swords. Okay, normally I try to keep things somewhat general, and I try to get too specific because then I might leave people out. But this time, what's really coming through to me here is like, I feel like whatever this is, it has something to do with work, some kind of position that you didn't get or lost. And now there's this feeling of like reluctance, like a worry of going towards some kind of self-employment, or a reluctance to go in that position. Maybe you took some kind of venture towards self-employment. The Nine of Pentacles tends to be independence, financial independence, doing things on your own. This tends to be like the independent contractor, the freelancer, the person who's starting up their own business or something like that. And that's just kind of what's coming to me. If that's not specifically you, maybe there's some kind of symbolic connection for you, but there's almost like a reluctance to have to do this because there's just a lot involved. It's like there's so much more. It's a lot of work, feeling overwhelmed, trying to juggle too many things by yourself. It's just too much to feel like carry it on your own. And maybe coming from this, there's like a new realization, a sudden sort of flash of insight about the idea of like competition. Maybe whatever you're into, it's very competitive, and there's this kind of almost like this isn't as fulfilling as it once was, or that I thought it was going to be. Like the competition element, the all having to manage and handle all this stuff on my own, and dealing with all this fierce competition, and some of these other people are really cutthroat, and there's just all this. It's not the it's just not really as fulfilling or enjoyable as you might have thought. And there's that sort of restlessness again. But I pulled a couple more cards here, and we've got the Hierophant, oops, and the Four of Wands. And so I get maybe there's a general sense that like the more like the spiritual side of things maybe is more appealing to you more than it used to. And there's this kind of like stark contrast between your interest in these sorts of things, these sort of like higher learning type things, and this idea of like sort of flowing with the universe and like manifesting things, and the whole spiritual magical mindset of things might be more interesting and seem more fulfilling and more appealing. But then when you try to, but there's this whole other aspect of your life that seems to be in conflict with that, and it's starting to rub you the wrong way, I think. Let's see here. And Capricorns tend to be, in a lot of cases, all business. They do not like to give up on things. They will stubbornly stick to something, even if they know it's not really something they particularly even want anymore. It's like just based on principle, they'll continue, climbing that mountain, even if they aren't even actually that interested in what's at the top of it anymore. So there's a bit of a momentum happening here, and just this kind of conflict between these two very different ways of looking at the world. And there's the one you're used to that has been interesting and fulfilling to you in the past, but now there's something else that seems to be, you know, almost opposite of what you have been doing. So there's a lot of thinking and uncertainty behind a lot of this. I'm going to pull some more cards and see what else we get. So we've got Temperance, the World, the Three of Cups, Strength, oops, and the Two of Wands. So I definitely don't get the sense that this is indicating that you should give up on whatever you're doing. But there's a sort of there's a change in perspective. There are things that you're being faced with that are kind of making you want to, that will kind of lead you doing some of the same things, but from a different perspective and for a different reason, which allows you to sort of alleviate some of the pressure on yourself. That makes whatever it is that you're trying to handle and manage here, that feels like there's just so much to try to hold on to, and there's all this competition, and there's like that overwhelming feeling that makes the whole thing maybe feel harsh. Continuing on doing what you're doing, but alleviating that sense of pressure, because there's this kind of breakthrough. There's this breakthrough involving strength. The effortless power. This kind of realization that the two things that you're interested in aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. It's just that one leads to a different approach. If you have if you take this more, spiritually oriented, kind of manifestation centric viewpoint, that essentially reality is a projection of consciousness ultimately, and that there's no need to fight and compete and like turn this into a big competition. You just do what you do to the best of your ability without putting so much pressure on yourself that you burn out and drop the ball. And then, because the ultimate outcome really has less to do with what you do as much as the state of being you embody as you do it, you know. Um, so there is like an end of a cycle that's been going on here, but it's not like the end of, like, you don't have to just scrap, your whole project or whatever it is you've been working on in favor of this ascetic lifestyle where you're going to go just meditate all day. There's a balance here. But it's like the forcefulness is what is kind of being removed. But it's a process. It's not immediate. It's not an overnight. Snap your fingers and all of a sudden it's just you just do everything differently, because these are internal patterns, and if anything, the thing that's really causing you to maybe encounter a situation where you feel like there's too much to handle, there's too much on your shoulders, and there's all this cutthroat competition and arguments and just like conflict in some way. These are ultimately expressions of the sort of arguments and conflicts that are going on within yourself. Your baseline sort of state of being is what really determines the quality of your reality, and it kind of shows up all over the place. But so kind of merging and balancing the two so that you can do what you do the way that you in a way that you enjoy, without letting the sort of doubt and fear and competitiveness sort of get you down. Anyways, if you want to get into a private reading, learn more, just send me an email or check out my website. Remember to like and subscribe. I'm going to leave it at that for now, and take care.